Welcome to Filthy Casual MMA News. I am Dr. Evil Genius for TSP. All right, so we just had UFC Saudi Arabia, the first UFC event held in the country. And there were a few stories that I wanted to cover. I would probably say special mention would go out to Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker is the funniest knockout victim in the history of the UFC. Like, I don't think anybody really comes close to being consistently knocked out in extremely entertaining ways. So shout out to Johnny Walker, getting completely dusted by Volkan No Time Uzumir. Okay, into our first story. I want to talk to you guys about Fat Nasrat, aka Kevin Gastelum. Now, before, we used to say that Nasrat was the smaller Middle Eastern version of Kelvin Gastelum. But after the debacle that transpired during fight week, leading up to Gastelum's matchup with Daniel Rodriguez, Kelvin Gastelum has lost a lot of respect from apparently a lot of different people in MMA circles. Gastelum had that classic all-time attempt to get the interim middleweight title when he fought Israel Adesanya. He fought valiantly. There was a lot of respect. Since then, it just hasn't been great, okay? Gastelum came into this fight talking about how he needed to win this fight to save his job. And I do believe that most of us agreed with him until he got on his knees and started begging, baby, please, to Daniel Rodriguez to get him to take the fight, not at the agreed upon, signed off on, contracted welterweight limit of non-title limit of 171 pounds. No, he asked for it to go to middleweight. Now, Daniel Rodriguez was clearly unhappy with this and is definitely one of the worst weight misses I think I've ever heard. Some people said that, hey, this is really just a middleweight fight. Even in the telecast showed it as a middleweight fight. But for many people, they looked at it as this is a catch weight at 185 because Kelvin Gastelum showed up 14.5 pounds over the limit. Yeah. So from watching him become just a very pedestrian fighter at best to watching this level of unprofessionalism, he is now known as Fat Nasrat. It's just what it is. It's kind of like how the weird thing that we do on the MMA streams where, you know, we've gotten to know and love Chase Hooper over the years, and then Roman Kopylov then came into the UFC, and then we call him Jumbo Chase Hooper. You know, the guy that comes in first, they kind of get the moniker. And Gastelum, we had a lot of respect for him, and you know, we looked at Nasrat as a guy that was like a mini Gastelum. Not anymore. Gastelum, around these parts, you were known as Fat Nasrat. And I was calling for him to be cut whether he won or lost. And I thought that I would be alone in this. But according to Bloody Elbow, They have a bunch of tweets from fans that agreed with me. I will have the link to this article in the description. And a lot of these fans were just like, forget this guy. We're not. Just no. One person said, D-Rod fought a 30 pounds heavier Gastelum and he lost because of it. And suggesting that the promotion, quote, cut the refrigerator and give Daniel Rodriguez the win. So there are a lot of people who really think that Gastelum should have been cut, win or lose. I thought I'd be alone in that, and it turned out to not be the case. Dana White had some words to say regarding Gastelum's lack of professionalism, because really you have two jobs as a fighter. You have the job to make weight, and then you have to step in the cage. So you get paid as long as you do those two things. And, you know, just... it's just really, really disappointing. I'll definitely put this article that I got from MMA Mania. I'll put that in the description as well, so you guys could see what Dana had to say. But I didn't get the sense that Dana is willing to cut Gastelum at this point. But oh man, I would love to see Gastelum get cut. Because Daniel Rodriguez was correct. He didn't think that if Kevin Gastelum made the weight, that he would have been able to keep his gas tank as high as it was. He would not have been able to absorb some of the heavy strikes that Daniel Rodriguez put on him. And I agree. I think that some of the takedowns that happened, I think even Daniel Rodriguez talked about it. I'll be also linking this article from Bloody Elbow in the description down below. Daniel Rodriguez really thought that Kelvin Gastelum really couldn't hang with him at 170. But very nicely done for Rodriguez, and shout out to Dana. I've been pretty critical of Dana on this platform, but I got to give Dana a lot of credit here. The way that things worked out for Daniel Rodriguez, even in the loss, is that before the fight, when he agreed to let the fight go on, despite being at a crazy disadvantage, Rodriguez was given a nice pay raise for the fight. He was also given a new 6-fight contract. So I was a little bit worried that they might be considering cutting him instead after the loss. Nope, he got a new 6-fight deal, which is awesome. And he also got 30% of Fat Nasrat's purse, which when you think about it, Fat Nasrat has way more fights in the UFC. He had a fight for the interim 185 title that he lost, that classic fight that I alluded to earlier when he fought Israel Adesanya. Kelvin Gastelum has way more fights in the UFC, which means that his pay escalates. So it was likely that he was going to get paid a whole lot more money for his show and win than Daniel Rodriguez would normally get paid for his show and win. So without really having knowledge of each man's contracts, it is very much possible from somebody who's on the outside looking in to see that even though Gastelum was given the win by Daniel Rodriguez getting 30% of his purse, he might have made more money losing than he would have made if he won. Which I think is That's kind of crazy. So I'm happy that there was a good resolution for Daniel Rodriguez. He did not deserve the BS that he was faced with in that fight. All right, so I do want to talk about my guy, Robert Whittaker. Everybody knows on the platform how much of a Robert Whittaker fan I am. Robert Whittaker had a very weird lead up to his fight. He was originally supposed to fight Khamzat Chimaev. And that didn't work out because there are a lot of issues with Chimaev's health. Now, a lot of people are already declaring him to be the biggest what if in the history of the UFC. I'm not ready to call it on his career. He came back from the severe long Rona issues that he had that almost forced him to retire. And he came back and had some pretty nice performances. Obviously, he should not have done what he did with in the Gilbert Burns fight. And he is looked upon by many to have struggled too much with the former welterweight champion Kamaru Usman when they fought at 185. But he had a broken hand very early in the fight. And it doesn't seem like too many people really want to talk about that. So people are looking at this latest health issue that he's having, and they want to write him off. And I don't think that that's wise. I'm not ready to say that Chimaev can't be a champion, that he can't be a contender, that he can't be one of the boogeymen of the UFC, either at welterweight or at middleweight. Now, the man who is now claiming to be the boogeyman of the middleweight division, that is Robert Whittaker, one of my favorite fighters of all time. You guys that watch the live streams, you know. I was a little bit afraid because he did not prepare for his opponent that he ended up fighting at UFC Saudi Arabia. Now, one of the things that I found was very interesting before he stepped into the cage with Ikram Aliskerov is, you know, the 31-year-old Aliskerov scared off a bunch of fighters. Apparently, nobody wanted to sign on the dotted line. And when you think about the fighters who are in the top 15, top 10, top 5, this guy is looking like a killer, and he's unranked. Guys want to go where the money is. The money is where the pay-per-view points are. The pay-per-view points are where the champion is, and you becoming the champion. So if you're highly ranked in any division in the UFC, you don't want to take unnecessary risks with guys that look like killers when you know the money comes from holding the title and getting those pay-per-view points. Now, Robert Whittaker had no problem signing on the dotted line, ranked number 3. And he was a very small favorite in this fight. And I could see why Vegas would be a little bit, you know, a little apprehensive, being that Aliskerov really beat the crap out of a lot of guys and did so in impressive fashion. And this was not an opponent that Whittaker prepared for. So obviously you can make the case that Whittaker preparing for Chimaev might have made him better prepared for somebody like Aliskerov. We will never know until we see that Chimaev fight. Whittaker put He beat the brakes off of Askarov in record time. That was kind of crazy. But here's a really interesting thing. And I'm taking this from MMAfighting.com. The link to this article will be in the description if you care to read it. Following the event, Whittaker's manager Titus Day told Fox Sports Australia that his fighter had also been experiencing health problems and that Whittaker underwent emergency surgery 24 hours before they were to fly to Saudi Arabia. Quote from Day, Robert has a really bad abscess that flared up a week before flying out. He had headaches, tooth pain, and it was like he had been kicked in the side of the head. He couldn't train, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. It was effing painful. The whole side of his head was in pain, so we had to rush him in for emergency surgery, end quote. So Whittaker did not talk about it during fight week. He did not talk about it afterwards. Obviously, he's letting his manager speak for him. So really looking at just how crazy his week was, even before getting to Saudi Arabia, you just got to take your hat off to Robert Whittaker. I was a little bit afraid when I saw him come out to the cage, because I remember the first time that he got knocked out twice by Israel Adesanya. It really looked like he was trying to create some emotional fire where it wasn't. And he confirmed after the fight that he really was not. His heart and soul was not really there. And I was a little bit afraid that he was trying to psych himself up on his way out to the cage. But then, he stuck out that rushing jab, caught him with the uppercut. And that was all she wrote. So, Whittaker is I don't think I've ever heard Whittaker speak so forcefully before or after a fight. He's like, I am the most dangerous guy at 185. And so I think that he thinks that he's found the key to beating Adesanya. Yeah, I thought that he was out fighting Duplessis before he got caught, and that threw him off. So I think Robert is in a phase of his career where maybe he's just not afraid anymore. He's going to go in there, throwing knucks. He's going to let the chips fall where they may, and I think a more aggressive Robert Whittaker is a look out at 185. It was his first KO stoppage since 2016. And he did it to a guy that everybody else was afraid to fight. So shout out to Robert Whittaker. I really do hope that he is able to get all the opportunities that he wants. He is looking to possibly be a step in case there is somebody drops off from that title fight between DDP and Adesanya. So I do like this version of Robert Whittaker. Normally he's kind of a little reserved. Hey, whoever the UFC puts in front of me, I'm not really jonesing for the belt that hard. It's really not that serious. I, value being with my family and playing video games. Nah, he's not on that type of time anymore. He's like, yo, I'm here to cause a lot of pain and knock mofos out. And you guys know me as a nice guy, but no more Mr. Nice Guy. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Of course, I do root very heavily for the former middleweight champion of the world, Robert Whittaker, the Reaper. So we talked about Fat Nasrat, and we talked about the Reaper. I want to kind of end this off by asking you guys a question. Does the UFC need ring girls? So in preparation for recording this video, I was talking to Mrs. Evil, and she noticed a couple things that I did not notice, and that you know, when it comes to the Saudi customs, it's not just the men that want women to kind of take a back seat in public. It appears the women also want to take a back seat. One of the things that Mrs. Evil noticed that I did not is that the women shied away from anytime the camera panned in an area where there were women spectating, they were very quick to try to hide their faces. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And during the stream, I did notice that there was no camera cut towards the so-called ring girls because there weren't any. What I didn't really pay a lot of attention to is that there were no women fighters either. And so, you know, I was thinking about how the UFC gives out its fight kits to the fighters, and for the women that want to be covered up more, they could wear like a full t-shirt. But apparently, like, you can't even look at their wrists in Saudi Arabia. They don't want to see any female wrists or ankles being visible. So we were kind of talking, and it was like a comparison between WWE's Crown Jewel, which is held in Saudi Arabia, and they have female referees, they have female performers. But one of the things I found really funny about that is that, yes, they make them cover up, but then all the clothing is skin tight, so you can see all of their feminine curves. So it seems as though Saudi Arabia tolerates this from the WWE, and Dana White just didn't want to touch it at all. Just not going to bring women that can be visible. So no lady fighters, no ring girls. And then you look at the next event that they have coming up, and the main card is 60% women, including the last three fights. The last three fights are all women fights. So I'm kind of wondering if Dana is like trying to walk this weird woke tightrope that he doesn't really want to walk, where he felt like he had to leave women off of the television completely, and now he's going way in the opposite direction to give all of the prime airtime to women. I don't think I've ever seen a fight, the fight before the co-main, and the main, all women fighters. I don't think I've ever seen that before. So I would love to see what Dana would want to have, what he would say when asked about this unprecedented scheduling after having no ring girls and no lady fighters. But I wanted to kind of ask you guys your opinions about ring girls. Did you notice that they were gone? Did you miss them? Do you think that they have a place in the UFC? Or would you be just fine if they did not have them there anymore? The comment section down below is where you'll reply to my inquiry. I do thank you for watching Filthy Casual MMA News. I'm Dr. Evil for TSP. I'll see you in the next one.